It can seem inconceivable that someone so outwardly full of life as Robin Williams or Stephen Fry can feel so empty inside that they either contemplate taking their own life or they follow through with it. In a documentary about living with bipolar, Fry says, "Mood to me is like weather. If it's raining, it's no good saying it isn't raining. It is real, you know? The water is actually falling from the sky." The thing that keeps one living is a sense of future, that there will be a tomorrow. Tomorrow I've got to do this, and then the day after I've got to do that. Not that any of these things have a particular logical purpose or a convincing reason to exist, but somehow they keep one going. In the words of Dorothy Parker, you might as well live. There are lots of different mood disorders, but for this course we're going to focus on major depressive disorder, persistent depressive disorder, and bipolar disorders. Now, we briefly covered the symptoms of a major depressive episode in week 1, but let's take a closer look at the Dsm criteria. These can be roughly grouped into 3 categories: emotional symptoms, cognitive symptoms, and physical or somatic symptoms. The first 2 symptoms are key features of the disorder. They are depressed mood and anhedonia. Now, if people do not show depressed mood or anhedonia, then they are not experiencing depression. They may be experiencing a different disorder, but it's not depression. And when psychologists talk about depressed mood, they're not just talking about the sadness that you and I and everyone else has felt at some point in our lives. Depressed mood encompasses a range of negative mood states like emptiness, hopelessness, distress, or feeling disappointed or disgusted at oneself. It's not uncommon for people with depression to state that they hate themselves. And although depression is literally named after the symptom depressed mood, anhedonia is actually more common among people diagnosed. Remember that anhedonia is defined as a markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all or almost all activities. What this means is that people who are depressed don't just feel an increase in negative feelings, they also see a reduction in positive feelings. Now, this may seem blatantly obvious, but it's important to realise that experiencing fewer positive feelings can compound their already low mood. Even when a person with depression does happen to get out and do fun things, it still doesn't help. They're still just not feeling it. People with depression may also have feelings of worthlessness or excessive inappropriate guilt. These feelings can be accompanied by thoughts like, "I'm a failure, I deserve to be punished." With this feature in particular, you can see how the first group of symptoms, emotions, can feed into the second group of symptoms, cognition. I feel worthless, I think I am a failure. But depression doesn't just change what a person thinks, it also changes how a person thinks. Specifically, someone with depression will often experience diminished ability to think, concentrate, or make decisions. A person may become indecisive when previously they had no problems making decisions. They may find their mind wandering constantly or reading the same basic sentence over and over and over again and still not remembering what they just read. It's also important to remember that depression is not just a disorder of emotions. There are also physical or somatic symptoms as well. These symptoms include significant change in appetite or weight, but importantly, the person is not trying to lose or to put weight on. Insomnia, which is trouble falling asleep or sleeping too little, or the person may experience hypersomnia, which is sleeping too much. The person may feel psychomotor agitation, where they feel really jittery, or the opposite, psychomotor retardation, where they seem to move in slow motion. This slow movement is often reported alongside feelings of fatigue or loss of energy that is so extreme that even the most basic actions like getting out of bed can feel like an immense effort. Depression remains the most common psychiatric disorder worldwide. A less common mood disorder is persistent depressive disorder, which was formerly known as dysthymia. So you know how I just said that anhedonia is probably the most common trait in people with major depressive disorder? Well, Depressed mood is not just the most common symptom of persistent depressive disorder, it's also the key defining feature. Similar to major depression, people with persistent depressive disorder also experience additional symptoms, but we usually see fewer of these than we do with major depressive disorder. These symptoms include either poor appetite or overeating, and this doesn't have to be accompanied by changes in weight. Insomnia or hypersomnia, low energy or fatigue, low self-esteem, poor concentration or difficulty making decisions, and feelings of hopelessness. At least 2 of these symptoms plus low mood occur on most days and endure for a period of at least 2 years. And if these symptoms do let up and the person gets some reprieve, these symptoms return within 2 months. And so it's really not accurate to think of PDD as a less severe form of depression. Some people can have these symptoms for decades. You can see why it's called persistent depressive disorder. So what causes depression? Some of the environmental and other risk factors that increase a person's tendency to develop depression are stress, and this could be in the form of general stress, like having lots of responsibilities or experiencing traumatic life events such as the death of a loved one or losing your job, low socioeconomic status, substance abuse, and comorbid mental disorders like anxiety or schizophrenia also increase a person's risk of developing depression. We also know that women are more likely to develop depression, particularly trans women, as well as other folk who are gender diverse. It's not entirely clear why cisgendered women are more prone to depression than cisgendered men, but probably not surprisingly, societal prejudice and misunderstanding plays a role in the depression of people who are trans or gender diverse. One of the key features of major depressive disorder and persistent depressive disorder is that the person never experiences mania. Your textbook will go into mania in a little bit more detail, but essentially when someone is manic, they are abnormally elated. They are not just happy, they're euphoric. But they can also feel irritable and distractible. They construct grand plans, their mind races, they're unusually talkative, and they can set and work towards goals intently. Goals that often are completely unrealistic, like becoming a movie star or becoming the CEO of Cadbury's, then I can have all the chocolate in the world. People experiencing a manic episode feel on top of the world, godlike or invincible, and this can often lead them to do really risky things like spending their entire life savings on stuff they don't need. Manic episodes last at least a week, and during this time the person barely sleeps but never feels tired. Although unipolar mania does exist, it's very rare. Mania is usually associated with bipolar 1 disorder, and either results in hospitalization or it significantly interferes with a person's functioning at work or with their family and friends. This can be contrasted with the hypomanic episodes associated with bipolar 2 disorder, which causes less impairment and usually has fewer symptoms. Thanks for watching. Today we've taken a closer look at the DSM-5 criteria of a major depressive episode. We've contrasted this with the symptoms of persistent depressive disorder or dysthymia, and we've also introduced the idea of mania and bipolar disorders. In the next 2 videos, we'll take you through the causes of depression and also treatments for depression.